more balance. But yeah, shall we make a start then? I think there may be a few
Let's go.
trickling in, but let's make a start. So afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our webinar this afternoon, first one of 2026, first of many, I hope. Really glad that you've taken the time to be here today, especially because everything is really, really busy at the moment, isn't it? Let's be honest. I hope it's going to be an inspiring hour for all of us and we can all take something away from it. I'm really looking forward to it personally. I'm sure I'm going to take something away just to help with getting that better balance in our life, and it is definitely a very, very timely one at the moment. We have got quite a few actually great speakers today. So we've got a few from within the NHS, and obviously we'll do the intros properly in a minute, but we've got Lorna, Archana, John, Lydia and Ella, all of whom are going to be able to share some of their own personal experiences. And we're also joined by Bill as well, who will also introduce himself properly as well, but he focuses on homeopathy and other kind of holistic approaches to well-being. So a little bit of an angle there in terms of some other options for us all to be aware of in terms of how to achieve some balance. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Sarah Griffiths. I am an ICB CFO, really privileged to be co-hosting our network with Nicola and also today's webinar. So I'll just say a few words about our topic today. I'm going to keep it fairly brief because, like I say, we've got quite a lot to get through and a number of speakers who've all got some really insightful stories to tell. I guess what I just start with is we all know, don't we, that the NHS is an amazing place to work, which is why we're all here. But it can be really exhausting, can't it? Particularly at the moment. And we all probably came into this line of work because we care, because we want to make things better, we want to change, etc. And all of those things, all of those qualities that make us good at our jobs around the commitment, the delivery, being empathetic and reliable, they're all the things that I think probably put us at risk of burning out because we really care and we want to do the right things as well. It's not always obvious either. I think things like burnout, I think they can creep in. There might be a few signs here and there of being tired or losing a bit of sense of purpose or a bit snappy or emotional, and all of those things. It's going to come out, isn't it, in different ways for different people. And in leadership as well, it can also kind of come across as guilt as well. So, guilt for not doing enough at work or not being present at home or in other areas of your life as well, or even guilt to admit that we're struggling from time to time as well. So it's just helpful for us to kind of acknowledge some of that. One of the reasons why we wanted to do this is because kind of to succeed here in our roles and to succeed as leaders, it's got to be sustainable. It's not always about kind of different ways of kind of teaching this. It's about sustainability. It's how we can kind of build our careers that we can stick with for the long term and actually grow in, enjoy, succeed as well, and without paying for that through our health or through relationships or family sacrifices, etc. as well. There isn't always a perfect formula. I don't think, balance and burnout is going to look different for all of us and it will change over time. What may feel manageable at one point in your career might completely feel different at another point in your career as well. But let's kind of create the space, hopefully this afternoon, to talk about this, talk about people's experience, and obviously learn from one another as we go along. So hopefully that's a little bit of getting us started. But I'm going to move quickly on to the first of our speakers because I think we've got some really, really insightful stories and experiences to share. So Lorna, can I please come to you first to introduce yourself and then say a little bit about the topic? Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lorna Dixon and I'm one of the Deputy Directors of Finance in the South West Regional team. I've spoken about my story many times, but never to a room this big. So when I saw today's topic, I signed up immediately, and then I've spent the last few weeks feeling absolutely terrified. But I knew it was the right thing to do because if I'd understood burnout earlier in my career, my own journey may have been slightly different. So I joined the NHS in 2007 as a Band 7 after 10 years in the private sector. My career progressed really quickly. I became a Deputy Director of Finance and it felt like the path to Director of Finance seemed almost inevitable. At home, life was intense. My husband works away in the Merchant Navy, so he's away half the year and home the other half. So I alternate between being a solo parent and having a house husband. So there's not very much balance there. Professionally, I was ambitious, driven, and reliable to a fault. Little Miss Perfect is often the phrase was used. So I thrived under pressure, hit deadlines, delivered more than was asked, and I didn't wobble, or at least that's what I told myself. In 2015, my organisation experienced financial difficulties for the first time. For an organisation that was proud of its track record, it hit hard. There were tough internal discussions, tough external discussions, enormous pressure to get back to balance. And for the first time in my career, I wasn't delivering. At the same time, I'd restructured my team and I'd outsourced payroll to contribute to the corporate savings plan, neither of which made me very popular. At home, things had started to become more complicated too. My eldest daughter, then 8, was struggling at school, so drop off and pick up had become a battle. Academically, she flourished, but she was utterly miserable. We stretched ourselves financially. We'd bought a new home, but was unable to sell the old one. And in the background, there was significant personal stress, while still unable to, while a mounting professional crisis. My response was more hours, more lists, more coffee, more Percy pigs. I kept pushing, convinced that working harder would solve everything. It didn't. So by early November, pressure was peaking. On a Thursday afternoon, my director of finance was briefing me on a meeting in London the previous day. And then as we were processing the outcome of the meeting, someone knocked on my door to tell me my head of procurement, a close colleague, had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. The world went quiet and I started crying. And I don't think I stopped for 6 months. My body had shut down and I'd hit full burnout. My husband came home from sea on emergency leave and I was signed off for 2 weeks, then another 2 weeks, and it didn't help. And eventually, after 6 weeks of being off sick, feeling like an utter failure, I resigned. I didn't speak to anyone in my network. I felt completely broken. It was one of the lowest moments of my life, but it's also one of the best things that ever happened to me because now I have balance. I just wish I could have learned it an easier way. So this is not a story of woe, and I'm going to share with you now how I came back and how I now have balance. So after 6 months, I slowly started to rebuild myself, working in the private sector and taking on short contracts in the NHS, and eventually came back to a permanent role in 2018. When I returned to the NHS, I talked about what had happened, and I was struck by how many senior leaders said, yes, me too. One person told me most senior leaders fall on their bum at some point, some harder than others. What matters most is what you do afterwards. I hadn't realised how common it was. I knew then and there I wanted to be more open about my experience, and I didn't want this to become a whispered secret club. So since then, I've done some real personal reflection, development and resilience work, supported by some amazing bosses. So I want to shout out now to Lindsay Holden, who's been really amazingly supportive to me. I've faced difficult roles, restructures and long periods of pressure, but this time with balance. So this is my advice to you. Get a horse or a horse-shaped hobby. So 2 years ago, I bought Ted, 17.1 hand ex-race horse, and the love of my life. When I'm at the yard, I cannot think about anything. I cannot think about work. It's my escape and my reset. You don't need necessarily a horse because that might not be suitable for everybody, but you need something joyful, absorbing and non-negotiable. Choose carefully who you work for. Choose to work for individuals who foster sustainable, responsible approach to performance. Build a real network. Family love you, but they want to protect you and may not fully understand the options available to you. Your immediate colleagues may be under the same pressure. So a network beyond your organisation is essential and you need to show up for them too. So I'll allow the occasional muddy puddle moment, that's the way I describe it. I think Elizabeth calls it baton leadership. So our work is complex and emotionally heavy. Sometimes you just need to sit with a trusted colleague and say everything that's frustrating you. Then you get up, dust yourself off and decide on what you're going to do next. Focus on what actions you can take for the things that you control and know your early warning signs. Mine are becoming hyper organized, hyper task focused, eating Twixes and losing the softness in my tone, which makes people less likely to approach me and support me. So my team know these signs because I shared them with them and they've seen me live. You see those things come out live, and they would gently yellow card me. So when I spot them in myself, I go back to the basics: food, sleep, priorities, network, TED time, and a muddy puddle moment. So thank you for listening. I'm always here if anyone wants to talk confidentially. If sharing my story helps even one person recognize the signs earlier than I did, then this has been worth every single moment of discomfort. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lorna, and we will definitely delve into some of those themes. Thank you so much for sharing that story. Before we do that, we're just going to hear from one of the speaker, and then we're going to break it up a little bit and have a little bit of Q&A before we go to our remaining speakers. So, Archana, can I come to you next for intro and a little bit about yourself? Thanks.
Thank you. First of all, thank you to Nicola and Sarah for doing this amazing, insightful sessions all the time. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Archana Patel, and I work in Royal Free Hospital as head of efficiency and financial recovery. I have been in NHS nearly 18 years, working across different organizations, different roles, started from band 5 to current role band 80, different levels as well, with different kind of NHS trust, hospital, foundation trust, CCG, PCT, you name it. One thing I would say to sum up NHS life and NHS finance life especially is everything is urgent. Everything has a deadline, very tight one, and somehow everything is needed yesterday. That's how I would define a life in NHS finance. That pace becomes normal, and that's where the risk begins, in my opinion. NHS over the years, the pressure hasn't reduced. It's grown. More reporting, more scrutiny, more expectations, more change. Only way to work. It's normal. Before I go further, I just want to say something important, which is I felt, and if you are burnt out, it doesn't mean you are weak. Often it means the opposite, that you care deeply, you take pride in what you do, and you have been caring too much for too long. Burnout isn't a motivation problem. It's a boundary problem, in my opinion. I want to share my personal experience on burnout. For a long time, I didn't realize I was burning out. And like what Lorna said, working hard, solve everything was the same theory for me. And I take that as a normal. When I realized when I didn't realize I was burning out, I personally felt that stage. Now that I know how to get the right balance when you feel burnout, it's a danger state. It creeps in quietly. And I would say I work closely with senior leaders. I got used to of requests coming on a late Fridays. Can this be ready by Monday afternoon? I got used to automatic response would be, yes, don't worry, I'll do it. I didn't question deadline. I didn't even ask whether there are real or artificial deadlines. I just observed the work. But the signs were there that I was feeling burnt out. And I'll tell you my personal experiences. So I was present at home with my family, but mentally at work. Give you example, watching a comedy program, everybody's laughing except me. They thought I didn't get the joke, but I was mentally at work. I stopped sleeping properly. I skip meals, especially when you are too busy at lunchtime. I skip lunch. That become quite normal for me. I woke up exhausted. I felt strange heaviness in my head. Not stress, not a headache, just an overload. It's something like your mind goes in autopilot mode and you don't know, and you just carry on doing without realizing what's going on. Things I enjoy, going to gym, switching off, listening to music, going for walks, it actually felt like an effort, and it never happened before. Those are the points triggered that I know something is not right or there is no right balance. And I felt extremely tired. So many times I forgot the count how often I actually logged in back after having dinners. Even at 11 p.m., midnight, over and over again and again. Work never reduces. The more you deliver, the more you are given. Somehow it's quite a culture. And the senior I become, I take that away and making sure my team don't feel burnout the way I have. I would like to share what actually helped me to rebalance. It wasn't a big change, one big change, or one day I woke up and thought like, okay, from tomorrow, I'm going to have look after my well-being straight away. And it happened. It was a few practical ones. And I want to share. So if you feel this way, you also implement it. One thing I think is um, there is lots of chaotic work style around us. And speak to your manager when you think like it's becoming overwhelming, when it's becoming like you don't know what are you working for or what's the end result is. So pause before you say yes to any workload or any work, which I didn't do it my past life. I always was yes person. So assess it, how long it actually will take, what's already in your plate. Do you have a resource within your team to deliver that? Um, and it's okay to have constructive arguments with your manager on timelines. Um, you can propose an alternative timeline. Politely, you can say this would not work because you have X, Y, Z. It's okay to challenge the deadlines, especially internal ones, which are the one which literally Friday afternoon, something is required Monday afternoon. Breaking the cycle. And my personal feeling how I came out of this burnout issue is burnout doesn't wait for your planned holidays. So whenever you feel it's getting too much and you feel it, you've been working long and stuff, um, when you feel overloaded, take that 1 day leave, break that chain. Yeah, and I generally take it when I feel that way. I take it Monday or Friday off, and I decide myself I would not log in, I would not check my phones or Teams, anything. I personally think, and also I'm a manager, so I have a team, and I think burnout is like a wildfire. You don't fight every flame, you remove the fuel so it doesn't spread. Because the minute as a manager you feel burnout, what happens? You have those meetings with your team and they will feel burnout because they would have you would have expectations as well. I also learned one thing: I would not be everyone's problem solver. And before, if somebody, even though I work in finance senior role, if someone say, oh, can you sort out, can you get me a laptop or can you set up my login? Somehow I would just do it. Yeah, I would ask someone to do it. But then I realized it's not my job. It's okay to say, it's not, I'm not the problem. So I'm not going to solve all the problems comes on my desk. Second thing, I also they ask for help. When you feel certain way, when you feel burnout, overload, it's okay to ask for help. And my personal nature was I never ask easily for help. I thought like it came to me, I have to sort it out everything by myself. It's okay. You have a good I'm fortunate enough to have good manager support in my life, and it helped me when I openly spoke about how I felt, how I'm stressed, emotional, crying because of the work, not crying because any other reason. All those things helped me. They gave me break. They gave me saying you can come, open door policy, you can discuss openly as well. Um, and I would say I would burn out spread through teams. So you have to model boundaries as a leader as well. People copy what they see. Um, they aspire what you do. And if they see you are always logged on, always green on the teams, even in the evenings, they will learn from it. So I think as a leader, we also have to pass right message to have a right balance. Like what Lorna said at the start of the conversation, and what Nicola and Sarah, take a break, having those small, go for a walk, 5-10 minutes, have a fresh air, do yoga, anything which helps you to do it. Do not do not let burnout to affect your well-being in a way that you can never reverse it, or you have to take on a long sick leave and things like that. So I would say my experience, do I still experience burnout sometimes? Yes, I do. But now I know how to balance and how to recognize those triggers early, and I act straight away instead of postponing it. So balance isn't just about doing less, it's about doing what you do well without burning yourself out in the process. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for sharing, Archana, and I'm sure a number of us can kind of resonate with so many of those things that you've said, and the same, Lorna. We're going to bring in another few speakers. We're really lucky today. We've got so many to get through, so we're going to probably struggle with time. But before I bring in our next batch, just wanted to sort of ask you both. So you've both talked really, really insightfully around your own personal experiences, and obviously the process and the thought process that you had gone through when you realised you were on the edge of burnout or even getting to burnout, and obviously what you can now do to keep yourself from getting there again. Just curious around what, in the beginning when this was happening for the first time, how long was it individually for you to kind of almost realise, admit, accept that this was burnout and something that needed to be addressed and taken seriously? Can I ask maybe Lorna, first of all, do you talk about that timeline just to gauge, sort of where these things may go?
So I would say I left it way too late, and that's a bit where my story I'm always talking about. It wasn't just something a couple of weeks would have got me better. I was 6 months very, very, very poorly when it hit me, and it was actually my body that switched off. Like literally, if you don't listen to these signs, your body will turn off the light. So I remember it would have probably been a year, because I remember planning for that financial year, 14-15 or 15-16, sorry. And I remember it being really tight planning round. So this time of year, I was really, really pressed trying to get to balance. And in the April, it was difficult. And then it was a year in the making, but and everyone was really surprised when it happened. But actually, in hindsight, there were the signs. But I just kept patching myself up and being thrown into the fray. My bosses helped me do that. My family almost helped me do that. And I left it too late. So for me, my thing is, do not ignore the signs, because eventually your body will stop you. And that's a bit, I wouldn't want anyone to experience that.
Thank you, Lorna. Anything more, Archana, to add on that one?
I think in my case, longer than it should have. And I would say personally, I felt like, when you get workload, I always wanted to be like perfectionist instead of sometimes good enough is good enough. And I think that's where when you realize, also earlier stage of my career, I thought burnout is showing my commitment. And it's the wrong thinking. So if anybody thinking like, oh, you're working hard, you're always there, long hours and stuff, it's actually a good thing. It's actually not. It's not. You can show commitment by having right balanced at work as well. So I think those signs did help me to come out of it quicker, or balance it actually. And you can never come out in NHS, but at least I can balance it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks both for that. We'll get on to some more questions, but can I just bring in our next few speakers? So, John, can I come to you next to say a few words as well?
Yeah, of course. Can everyone hear me okay? Hi,
Yep,
I'm John Evans. I could see a few familiar names pop up on the screen. So hi to everyone that knows me. I am Chief Finance Officer here at Bucks Healthcare. So we're an integrated community trust in Buckinghamshire. I've been a CFO now for just coming up to 5 years. The current role that I'm in, I've been at for nearly 3. So I had a particularly challenging experience in my previous role. So it was my first CFO position. So quite a daunting, kind of challenging set of expectations, stepping into a new organisation, new kind of position of seniority. That the particular circumstance I'm going to talk about was one where I had a particular challenge. My line manager had fallen out with our chair. I was working with a particularly, I'm going to use the word deliberately, kind of toxic colleague around their behaviours and kind of working with them. They were a very, very difficult peer to work with, and kind of making even quite simple decisions and simple pieces of work were quite draining. I was asked to step into a leadership role. I was asked to be chief executive, despite the challenges kind of around kind of delivering on the basics and some quite difficult relationships that were already in train across our executive leadership team and the board. And kind of given the big holes that those kind of things or issues kind of left, I was kind of considered, and I was kind of taken aside by some peers and a number of our non-executives, and basically saying, John, you're the best person for this job. We really need your support. Which, on one hand is a real vote of confidence. On another hand is kind of a really kind of leveling sets of expectation on you. When others are arguably kind of more experienced, have not been able to succeed in that environment. I had no real support in place to kind of make this a possibility, kind of on top of my portfolio responsibilities. It led to me kind of working through about a 6-month period of being really quite challenged. I had some quite strained relationships. I felt I wasn't performing as well as I wanted to. I began not to deliver in some key areas that became some quite demotivating, albeit kind of on the outside, kind of peers and colleagues in particular, our non-executives continued to be quite supportive and positive. At the time, outside of work, my youngest, I've got 2 kids, my youngest had just started primary school. She was having a particularly difficult settling in period, going into school, really didn't like it, kind of drop off, pick up, kind of wider motivation, really not there, being quite difficult and disruptive at home, not because she was kind of being badly behaved, but because she was struggling to kind of process and manage what she was dealing, and therefore that kind of buffer. I've got a phenomenal wife, kind of really, really good kind of bedrock of support. Hopefully we are for each other. That kind of wasn't there because kind of she had kind of responsibilities, as we both did, kind of at home, and more than kind of supporting me at work. Kind of how did that show up? It kind of showed up for me in kind of 3 ways. So kind of physically, I looked bloody knackered, right? Colleagues said to me, like, you look kind of pale, you look kind of withdrawn, you got a loss of colour. I put on quite a bit of weight. I was comfort eating. I had no energy. I was waking up, and I woke up probably for about a 4 to 5 month period at 2 a.m. on the dot every night. And there was nothing that I could seem to do to be able to shake that. And I'd lie awake for like 2.5, 3 hours, kind of everything rolling on my head, kind of revisiting my day, kind of going through how the next week would go, all of those kind of things that kind of, I'm a bit of an overthinker as it comes. And that kind of, I just couldn't seem to shake it. So I'd go to bed at a good time, but I kind of not have a kind of reasonable amount of kind of downtime to be able to kind of rest and recuperate. Kind of behaviourally, I was a really, really grumpy git. I was a grumpy git at home with my kids. I was a grumpy with my wife. She calls me on it. But thankfully, I was grumpy to my colleagues, be it peers, be it the wider team. I'd like to think I was quite a patient. I am quite a patient person. I kind of lost that patience. I kind of lost the ability to kind of just step back and go, let it go. I think we're absolutely in Frozen season at that point. Those that kind of love Disney movies, I was kind of had that kind of replaying in my head. And as I said, I became quite withdrawn. I think psychologically, I kind of lost quite a lot of confidence. I am quite a confident individual. I tend to have quite a lot of conviction around my decision making. I tend to be able to carry and support colleagues with that. There's a kind of part of being this role and being able to lead and being able to support people to come with you. And I kind of had that level of self-doubt that in my career I perhaps hadn't had before. That led to a bit of a spiral of confidence and kind of question myself around certainty, both to myself, to colleagues, to the wider team, and that's not really a position I wanted to be being, that kind of weight of pressure and expectation, that I kind of wasn't doing my best, both at work and also kind of not pitching up or kind of doing what I need to at home, and kind of, but probably as importantly, not being able to see a route through it, that kind of light at the end of the tunnel, that kind of hope, kind of endpoint. So I took a call. In fact, my wife forced me to kind of take a week off. So I took a week off, went on holiday. We've had some sun. I've got some perspective. I kind of reset some expectations for myself. So I kind of put some quite simple tactical things in place. So I'm quite fortunate. I get to manage my own diary for the most part. I've scheduled a kind of half an hour to 3/4 daily walking meeting. Like, we spend a lot of our time in front of a screen. There's a lot of stuff you can do on the phone. Managed to do it 15 years ago, managed to do it 10 years ago, 5 years ago. You know, not everyone needs to see my ugly mug when we're having a meeting. It's just not necessary. I get out, I get some fresh air, no matter how cold or warm it is. And I get to literally, I actually find myself more in tune with the conversation that I'm having with somebody, because I'm able to focus and focus on that. I've put some quite kind of structured things in place. I don't have caffeine after midday. That works for me, right? I don't eat a lot of sugar. I love Haribo. I love ice cream. Love it. Absolutely love it. I just know that if I've got a kind of high come 2 o'clock to get me through the afternoon, there will be an inevitable crash. I know it. I mean, you read the literature. I listen to a podcast called The Human Lab. It's a bit overly scientific for some people. I find it really helpful to kind of just work through we're quite simple beings, very complex, but also very simple. If you give your body a rush, it's got to have a come down, and kind of working out how you can manage your way through that. It's been really, really helpful for me. You might ask, why has it taken me 40 years to get to that point, or it did at that point? It just did. So I kind of got to that kind of managing my physical state. Kind of, I blocked out. I was fortunate enough to kind of spend a couple of hours, 3 hours, doing some proper sweat-inducing exercise. Like, that's not for everyone, but being able to literally be able to kick out the stress, push my body so that my body is being pushed in something other than kind of work or kind of home pressures, I was really fortunate enough to be able to do. I also kind of scheduled just a weekly catch up with someone. Wasn't necessarily the same person. I'm quite fortunate. I've got a decent network of people that will call me when I'm being an idiot, that will support me when I need it. And just being able to know that I can speak to someone, be it for a quarter of an hour, be it for 20 minutes, and just kind of go, this is how we're going, not to throw it over the fence, but to kind of go, you know, am I going mad? Just to get a bit of perspective. It's always someone outside of my immediate workplace. It kind of helps, you know, you don't feel judged, and you can kind of got someone that's got an outside perspective, just to kind of check in and kind of give that cursory glance on how things are going. But kind of me being able to put some structure in place, so I know what tools work for me. That means when I know things are going wrong, I know I've got a toolkit to go to. I know it works, you know, maybe not 100% of the time, but I know I've got something ready and kind of tested and able to be leaned upon, so that I don't need to get myself into a bit of a kind of spike, into a bit of a cycle. And I think knowing that I've got something that works for the most part for me, and planning, so things go wrong, things go badly, we work in stressful roles with a lot of responsibility on us. So I kind of, like, if you've not given yourself a toolkit to work on, you're probably failing yourself. I know it's a bit blunt, but you've got an opportunity from this call to go away and do that. There's some really, really great literature out there. There will be some really great advice that's already been given on this call. I tend to
John,
leave.
is it okay if I jump in here? Sorry,
Yeah, of course you can.
I'm just conscious of not covering the same ground twice, because I think that we will come on to some of those additional recommendations as well. And I want to make sure that we all get the chance to hear from all the speakers, if that's okay.
Of course you can. Can I say one other thing, Nicola?
Yeah, of course.
So the only other thing I'd say is my superpower is being able to take 2 minutes to breathe, close my eyes and breathe. It's an absolute superpower. I'll leave it there, Nicola.
Well, I'm intrigued by that as well, and I'm thinking if we can fit that in today. And can I quickly ask you, is that something you've learned, or as a result of the burnout and the challenge you had?
So just being able to clear my brain, being able to step away from where I am, and being able to put things into perspective.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Let's bring Lydia in as well to share her experiences as well. Here we go. Can everyone see Lydia?
Hiya. Hi. Thank you, Nicola, and thank you for this opportunity. It's a privilege to hear from all of you. I'm going to be quite brief. So I experienced sort of where I noticed I had burnout was in my previous role. We had a very close-knit, team. My team, the bit that we know each other, we know our families, but we had shortage of staff, maternity and secondment, and that meant we had to pick up things this way and also upwards. Between all of us, we were sometimes, 8 p.m., be on the teams and be emotionally drained. Lorna did mention that, within our team, even though we are close, we all knew we were supporting each other. We all knew that we were drained. What we did was, and we had gone out to advert. We were in successful recruiting. So, month 1 turned to month 2, month 3, and we all recognized that. And from what everybody has shared, you go home, you feel grumpy. I have 2 children, and I'm snapping and all of that. And I'm one of those things that people that I can, I ask for help. But we all recognize this quite between all of us. What we did was ask, and we had our deputy director at the time step in to sort of support, obviously for the short term, asking for that sort of support. Across most of my life, I would step up, and I'll give one example in my personal life where I had my daughter on the 19th of December. My older daughter was meant to go to school on the 5th of January. I didn't have the support at home, to manage the 2 children. I stepped out of the front of my door in front of my steps and stood there and hoped, with my little one, and hoped that somebody will pass by. And luckily, somebody passed by in front of my house, and I asked for support to take my older child, who was in reception at the time, to school because I was still recovering. I didn't have a natural birth, so I was still recovering from a lot of surgery and all of that. But that taught me to kind of reach out, and from there, this individual took my daughter on a day-to-day basis to school and brought back. We became friends from there. What I didn't have in my previous role was I didn't have a network outside of work. It was just us. So we would comfort each other, and I'll go and crash at home after that, even though, it would seem like, we've comforted each other. We'll come back in the morning, everybody join, sign up, logged on very early, but we still felt very drained. What I do to kind of bring balance, ask for help, but also what I do in my personal life these days is I have volunteering work where on a Friday once a month, and what I look forward to this volunteering is to give me opportunity to step out to walk, at least 15 minutes. I get fresh air. What this does is I'm supporting, it's sort of a volunteering that we support older citizens within the community with cinema. I get opportunity to watch a film that I normally wouldn't find time to watch myself. I also get opportunity to do at least 15 minutes walk and 15 minutes back, walk back 30 minutes in between, which normally, because I'm busy with children and work, I'll probably take the car. This an opportunity to step out to support and brings me a little bit of balance, which I feel it helps me quite a lot. Following that, picking from everything else that everybody has said, I'm building support network outside of my immediate work. So, recently I've got, amazing ladies, some of them are here, but also I belong to, I have a close-knit family, but also beyond that, I belong to a church group that, if they don't see me, they check up on me. I do the same. So there is that checking in, and sometimes I would just straightforward say, I am actually stressed. We chat about it, we talk about what's going on, and sometimes that feels a lot lighter. Has it stopped? Burnout stopped? It hasn't completely, but I recognize it from day to day, having learned from the previous experience. So hopefully it's able to help somebody else out there in their journey.
Thank you, Lydia. Yeah, and I'm sure it definitely will help others. And I guess that's kind of part of what we're trying to do this afternoon. So thank you for sharing that. We were always going to be up against the clock today because we've got so many amazing speakers and obviously a lot to share. I'm going to ask Ella to come in now for a couple of minutes, if that's okay, Ella, and then Nicola will bring in Phil, and then we'll have a little bit of time, I think, maybe for 1 or 2 questions. I hope that's okay for everybody. So over to you, Ella. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. And I'll try and whiz through, but just to say also, what I'm about to say, I wrote down not long after this happened to me. And Nicola, you have a copy of that, and if you want to share it, I'm happy for you to do so. So, like many people on this call, particularly women, I'm assuming I was raised to believe I could have it all: the kids, the perfect marriage, the family, the friends, the social life. It was all achievable. You can have it all. You'll find time. Don't worry. I was at a maximum commitment part of my life. I had a full-time job, 3 kids under 10, a husband I barely spoke to apart from about domestic stuff. And to get through that at the time, I did what I thought was the right thing. I put on a suit of armor, you might argue, a mask. I kissed my kids goodbye every morning and I headed off to work. I wanted to be excellent at this impossible job. I wanted to be a perfect mother. I wanted to be a happy wife. I wanted to be a social butterfly. And I've been told that was all achievable. All of these things were massively compromised by my growing need to be in a safe place. I had, and I still have 2. One is at home, hopefully with somebody else, or the other is with my best friend. That can be anywhere because I trust her unreservedly. Work pressures grew. Members of my team were getting sick. Voices around me were asking for more and more and more. I lay in bed one night surrounded by the silence of my family, and the walls just fell in around me. My thought processes went like this. And I wrote this at the time. I should resign. It doesn't matter. You'll get fired soon anyway. Why doesn't my husband just leave me? I wouldn't put up with the way I treat him. I'm failing my kids completely. There's nothing for dinner tomorrow. I'm going to be late for work. I should phone my parents more often. Why don't my friends call me anymore? I haven't read the board report and now it's too late. Did I make my team sick? Am I a terrible person? I didn't pay for the school trip. I should just leave. They would all be better off without me. And it just went on and on and on through the night. Long trailing of failings, irrational thoughts, no positives anywhere in the mix. I had all this in my head, and the next morning I obviously got up, put on my suit and went to work. The trigger of my anxiety historically has actually been health. I had heart surgery in 2011, immediately before which a very lovely junior doctor looked at me and said, "You might not make it." I know he was just doing his job, but that never left me. I developed routine anxiety about all health. If I had a headache, I had a brain tumor. If I had anything else, I had cancer. And I then had that, at this point in my career, developed some genuine symptoms which needed investigation, but probably not sinister, but I decided were going to kill me. And that wouldn't go away in my head until I'd been through the diagnosis. And I lay awake at night thinking, what do I need to put in place for my kids when I die? So the morning after this night, I stumbled through some meetings, more demands, presented a report to a board I hadn't even read, made it to lunchtime with tears held back in my eye, and then it all just fell apart. The tears came. So a lovely colleague rooted me off the floor, took me into a room. I cried for 2 hours, told him a lot of the crazy stuff that was going on in my head. And he said, "That's okay. That's normal and also unsurprising, given what you're trying to deal with." I came home that night, told my husband he wasn't allowed to say anything, but he had to listen. He complied. He listened. He said at the end of it, "We'll get through this." And he made me some dinner for the first time in a while. I took 3 months off work. I cried for the first 6 weeks. I still suffer anxiety. The irrational fears haven't gone away, but I've taught myself some key lessons. And that's what I really want to share with you today. The first one is it's okay to be vulnerable, but it's more important that it's okay to show it. I had to question what I was trying to do by wearing this mask all the time. Who was I trying to prove something to, and what was it? It's okay to not be okay. Life is just a cycle of positive and negative experiences, and dropping a few balls is normal. It doesn't make you a failure. Trust the people around you. Don't hide from them. the support and understanding comes from the most unexpected of places. And don't let the things which don't matter break you. If you leave a job, you'll be replaced. Don't compromise everything else in your life to prove perfect at a role which is impossible to people who are essentially temporary in the scheme of your life. And care for your team as you need to be cared for, but not at the cost of your own well-being. I allowed this to happen to me again 10 years later. And I thought I was protecting my team. I thought I was trying to not leave them in an environment which I felt was toxic. But again, I fell, and again, I had to take 3 months off work. And I had to relearn all of my lessons that I thought I had embedded in my kind of cultural behaviours at work. People you talk to, the more people you talk to, the more you realise everyone has these demons, anxieties, pressures. Most people keep them hidden. We all have a critical mass. I urge you not to allow yourself to get to it. Talk to someone. It doesn't have to be someone you know, someone you don't. It doesn't matter. What matters is saying it out loud and somebody listening.
Thank you. Thanks, Ella. That's fantastic. And having spoken to you at length about these, it's really interesting to hear some of your views on that. Thank you so much. I'm now going to bring in Phil into the conversation. Phil runs his own homeopathy business, and he's not just a homeopath, he's a scientist actually by background with decades of experience in health, and also has done some quite senior roles in the NHS as well. What I liked about the conversation I had with Phil, and why we really wanted to have a kind of expert, a specialist, someone who can, who can provide help if we need that. His approach blends evidence-based homeopathy with a compassionate and coaching-led style, which is designed to empower people. So picking on, I guess, what everyone said here as well, how do you bring yourself out of these burnout episodes in a way that empowers you to still do your job and pursue your career and be the best parent, etc. So Phil's approach helps you restore balance and resilience so that you can thrive, basically, professionally and personally. So I will hand you over to Phil for a brief intro, and I'll include your links on the chat as you're talking, okay. Phil.
Great, thanks, Nicola. Thanks very much for inviting me today, and good afternoon, everyone. We've heard some really compelling stories in this session, all been fantastic, and all resonate with lots of conversations I have more generally with people about how they're going to cope. I thought it might be useful just to start with a bit about homeopathy. You might or might not know it, you might have a view, you might not have a view. But if I start with something which has been the common thread of what we've talked about through the other speakers, is this vital force, this energy that we have coursing through us that keeps everything organized, keeps everything in balance, and helps us manage our day to day. So it's dealing with every 120 days replacing your red blood cells, or potentially at the end of a tricky week at 3 o'clock in the morning, helping you deal with the second extra large glass of wine that you may or may not have had. So all of those things are managed by the vital force. And if you think about it as a battery, you start out with a full battery, and it's determined genetically the kind of battery you've got and what capacity it has. And then you live a life, and you live through early childhood, through traumas, through relationships, through early work, through mid-work careers to senior roles. And each one of these has an impact on the amount of energy you have. If you have a traumatic event and you can't deal with it, then your body uses amount of this vital force to store that event. It hides it, it locks it away. And over time, you build up layers, a bit like layers of paint on a door. Eventually, you've got a layer on the surface which looks fine, but underneath there's a whole lot of trouble. And what homeopathy does is homeopathy uses naturally based remedies, which are ultra dilutions. And so the homeopathic method extracts energy from a substance, whether it's animal, vegetable, or mineral, and it uses that to trigger the body's normal response to the problem it's been dealing with, but it's got in storage. So it's a bit like a P&L for energy. And every time you have an event you don't deal with, it's an L. And eventually you get to the point where you don't have enough energy left to deal with anything. So you've run out. And for sometimes, particularly in young children, they can suddenly have a catastrophic disease without showing any symptoms whatsoever because their energy has run out. So the body's got no energy to respond. It's very different to a standard medical model where in medicine you would typically treat something like an eczema rash with a steroid. But what you're actually doing is pushing the problem the body's trying to push out. You're pushing it back in. So you end up with recurrent eczema. In lots of cases that I see, a traumatic event that happened when somebody was younger has caused toxins to be built up in the system, which is then held in the liver, which pushes it out to the skin. The skin is dry, the toxins build up, and you end up with an eczema type response. You might go to see a GP who'll give you a cream, and that will deal with the rash, but it doesn't deal with the underlying challenge. So what we do as homeopaths is we look at the whole person. What's your genetic history? What's happened to you in your life? The first consultation's an hour and a half to talk through all the things that you're dealing with. And very often the last thing, which is burnout, is as a result of everything that's built up over time. So it's not a quick fix. It's not surprising it takes 6 months to recover from it. What you're dealing with is a whole load of challenges that your body's tried to deal with in your life to date. Now, for some women on this particular call, you'll also be going through perimenopause and potentially menopause. You've got that to deal with too. So you've got physiological changes, and men too go through something, but nothing as quite as physiologically dramatic. So you've got that overlay. So if you think about it, everything that you're doing that the body can't get rid of, and you've got lots of mechanisms to get rid of, all the challenges. So your skin is one I've talked about, but obviously your gut is another. Your bladder is another, tears are another, breathing is another. All of the systems that you have to excrete what the body no longer needs, if they're not functioning effectively because of something that you've had, and it could be a trauma, physical, mental, or emotional, then you get a build-up, and that causes lots of problems that people feel and see. So how do you deal with it then? Well, you could deal with it symptomatically, and you could say, oh, I'm very tired, I'll try to get more sleep. But what you're not actually doing is resetting underlying the energy level that you need to sleep properly. So if you're habitually waking up in the middle of the night at a certain time, I think, John, you mentioned that in what you were saying, that is linked to an emotional, mental, and physiological issue. That is not that is not due to a can't sleep. That is as a result of all of the compounding interest really underneath of all of the losses that you've made from your energy store. Waking at 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 to 4 o'clock in the morning, that's liver related probably. So there's something about toxin buildup. So there's a whole lot of things that are going on that you can deal with homeopathically. But unlike traditional medicine, there isn't a one standard way of fitting everything. There isn't a take this magic bullet, you'll be fine. You have to look at a profile of the individual from birth all the way through to today, and what is their story. So I thought I'd just give you an example of a couple of things that you could take. There is something you can buy over the counter, which is, I don't know if you can see that, which is a basic remedy kit. And I'll provide, Nicola, I provided the link. I didn't get a chance to give this to you. But this has a whole load of things that you can use with your family at home, and you can use it. There's a small booklet comes with it, which has instructions in it, what to do. So if you've got a cough, a cold, a headache, you feel sick, you've overindulged the night before, you've got IBS, some level of IBS, you've got something like that. There are things you can take homeopathically, which are non-toxic and completely safe for in pregnancy, newborn babies, frail elderly people, even people who work in finance. It works for a whole spectrum of individuals. You can take you could take these remedies. But if you want to deal with something a little bit more complicated or something that's a longer term issue, then you'll need some support from a homeopath. So I wanted to give that brief overview. The kind of people I talk to, they talk about some things we haven't talked this morning. They talk about experience. They experience a feeling like they've got 50 browsers open on their tabs open on the browser at once, and it never goes. They've got the TV on and they've had to put subtitles on because they can't concentrate on listening to it. They have to read it as well, otherwise it doesn't go in. They wake up more tired in the morning than they were the night before. So they find that in their head they're processing it in a way which is actually going to sleep makes me more tired. So maybe I shouldn't sleep as much. They're substituting meals for snacks. So crisps is a very big symptom for me that I look for. Have you got any crisps in the house? And have you noticed any change in how and you're eating them? Well, yeah, I have those for lunch now. They do more, actually. The busier you get, the more burnt out you get, the more you try and do for others. So you go in the opposite. It's quite counterintuitive to how you're working and thinking, because you think I should slow down, but end up doing more, take more responsibility, do more things. And in the home life, when I ask about, well, how does it work at home? How do you balance the workload at home? No, I do everything. I haven't got time to wait for anybody to get organized to do. I just have to do it myself because it's just easier. So anyway, all of those things now we've heard this morning from people in their stories, which have been fabulous. Some of those symptoms, but it also works for people who are in recovery. So those who do exercise, I see people who start out in recovery and then they're talking to me about plantar fasciitis, and they've got strain in their ligaments and their joints done, and they've got all sorts of physical issues because their body still needs to recover and it hasn't quite got rid of everything yet. So there are also things that you can do homeopathically for whilst you feel and acting healthily to help protect. So my contact details, Nicola, you're putting those into the chat.
Yeah, I have. I've put also the two links that you sent me this morning. I've added in, and we'll have to wrap it up there, Phil, because
no,
I think
fine.
some people have to move on to other meetings.
Sure.
But what was fantastic about that is one, you well, actually three things. I love the scientific explanation for what people are feeling. I hope everyone in this call realizes that this is something that everyone will feel, and the reasons behind that Phil has explained so well. I love how you made it relevant to our audience, talking about P&L as well. It's very relevant. And some of the solutions that you suggested as well, fantastic. And I think please do read more on the links I've added, and Phil's put a very kind offer there as well. If anyone wants to take up on that. I think there are many ways to look at the challenges that you're facing and to actually think about how you can not just get extra sleep, but actually tackle the reason why you're not sleeping. So, it's sort of things out at the root of the cause. And I think Phil's suggestions do that very, very well. I just wanted to briefly, one final question from everyone for all of our panel today, just to sort of wind up our session in a really positive way, if I can. And it was just really like, what's the one piece of advice that you would give to your future self, or to someone that hasn't yet experienced burnout but may well do? What is the one thing you would say? And if we could do it in probably in order from Lorna first, but if you can keep it quite snappy. Thanks.
My future self would be continue to find joy outside of work. It's like work will be hard, it will be challenging, but find the joy outside of work because it keeps you balanced.
Thank you. Archana.
Mine will be, you don't have to earn the rest or balance. Simple as that.
Sorry, say it again.
You don't have to earn the rest. You deserve to rest. Yeah.
You're entitled to it. Yeah.
Yes.
John.
Have a plan for when things go wrong, because things will go wrong, and the better plan you've got, and the more structured that plan is, the better chance you've got of sorting it out.
It's inevitable, isn't it? It's going to happen. Yeah. Lydia.
Yeah, so our life is going to carry on being busy. Reach out for help, ask for support from your colleagues, from your networks. It's important.
Thank you. And Ella?
Perspective. I mean, particularly in the environment we all work in, will people die as a result of you not delivering that piece of work? Probably not. And other than that, just listen and be willing to listen.
And Phil, your final thoughts as well.
I was just going to say there's natural support available, so you don't have to fight it on your own.
Thank you. I'll do a quick wrap up. Sarah and I will stay on for another 10 minutes or so if anyone else wants to stay on. We've gone massively over on time today, partly because it was such an interesting subject, and so each one of you had such interesting stories to share. And I want to say thank you so much to our fantastic speakers today for sharing their stories in such a positive and honest and inspirational way. Actually, every single one of you, I'm kind of a bit in awe of now. And please do read the comments coming through in the chat, because I think you will have inspired, touched, resonated with many people that have been watching this call today, that will help them when they navigate similar issues. Want to say a massive thanks to Phil as well for joining and for sharing what you do, how you do it, why you do it, and to Sarah for co-hosting as always. But I'll wrap up the call now, but we'll stay on the call if you do want to have further sort of chat or ask any questions. If the speakers want to stay on as well, then please do. I understand if you don't. I know you've given up a lot of your time, and you may need to rush up until the meetings. But thank you again, everyone.